With patch 10.7 finally in place, we're going to be going over the top Korean builds that are wrecking Korean high elo right now. A lot of the champions we're looking at here haven't really gotten highlighted in quite some time now, so be excited for some fresh new blood on the scene. Make sure you smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. Now, while the champion might not come as a surprise here, we are going to be talking about Wukong. However, we are going to be talking about Wukong Jungle. And for the runes that you want to take on Wukong Jungle, you want to make sure that you grab Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight, with attack speed, adaptive, and armor for your minor runes. Of course, if the enemy team really has little to no CC that you're worried about, then feel free to take Alacrity instead of Tenacity. It's just better. These runes really aren't that much different from what you would take in Wukong and lane. However, the obvious difference here is the fact that you have the Inspiration secondary with the Magical Footwear and the Cosmic Insight. This just helps you scale, gives you free gold and the free boots, and the movement speed is really nice. As for the similarities between item builds and Wukong lane and Wukong jungle, this is where things really start to stop looking the same. When you're playing the Chimp in his natural habitat, you want to make sure that you pick up Cinder Hulk with tabbies and merch treads depending on the enemy team. After that, grab a Black Cleaver, then a Sterix, Death Stance, and a GA. Now you might notice that some of these items are pretty obvious. Something like Death Stance might seem really intuitive, as it's a great item on Wukong. However, the Cinder Hulk is normally what's going to throw most people off, and that's because Wukong doesn't necessarily scale super hard with AD in the very early game. He primarily scales with levels. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Wukong does not scale well with AD, because he definitely does, but you need your abilities to be lower cooldown, and in order to get to that point, you need some survivability to get there along the way. You just can't simply match the burst of somebody like Lee Sin, for example. Yes, you do have your passive to give you armor, but if you don't ever get an opportunity to really hit him and start stacking up your resistances because all you did was build damage and you lose all of your health when he Qs and kicks you, well then what's the point? And well, just to make it crystal clear, the point is that you need Cinder Hulk. Second item really throws people for a loop too. That Black Cleaver is pretty weird considering that most of the time Wukong always builds Triforce. The difference here is that Triforce isn't really a great item in the jungle. You don't really make use of the Sheen passive that much. Yeah, I guess it'll help against jungle camps, but do you get it off multiple times in a given jungle skirmish by queuing your opponent? No, you're gonna get it off once, maybe twice, or maybe even 3 times at most in a given fight. So it's really not that great considering that most fights are decided very quickly. All the other items really shouldn't come as a surprise though. Sterix is a great item on Wukong, and you're gonna have a decent amount of bonus health here from the Cinder Hulk and the Black Cleaver to really up that Sterix shield. And of course, the Tenacity is always nice for Wukong. On top of that, Death Stance and GA are pretty standard items that you would build on lane Wukong most of the time. Sterix usually takes a back seat though, because Death Stance and other things are just more important in extended lanes. Now that we're moving out of the King of the Jungle's way, let's go into the bot lane, specifically talking about Blitzcrank support. With a lot of Ardent supports doing pretty well right now, and most of the big tanks starting to see less play and less performance, Blitzcrank is hopping up in terms of play rate and win rate. But we also see a change in the build, and it's to suit this exact meta. The runes are really nothing special. Blitzcrank is still functioning as a tanky frontliner support that has a great hook and CC. So of course, you're going to want to take Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Overgrowth, Cosmic Insight, and Biscuit Delivery with the scaling CDR rune, the Armor rune, and the Magic Resist rune if you're up against a mixed damage bottom lane, otherwise double armor or double MR as you need it. The interesting thing about Blitzcrank is that he has this weird thing where you feel like you want to hook at really long range and pull people super far. But the closer you get to the person, the easier it is to hit them. And this build really tests that theory out super hard. You're going to want to start with steel shoulder guards and then pick up your Moby boots, as is standard for pretty much every melee support and range support who wants to get their support item for wards and the Moby boots for the roam potential. After that, make sure you rush a Righteous Glory. Yes, a Righteous Glory, and then pick up a Knight's Vow, Redemption, and finish everything out with a Stone Plate. The purpose of this build is to sprint at people faster than they could ever hope to imagine, and once you get in melee range and you force them either into the air with your E or force them to flash, you have the ability to either close the distance even more because you hit them with a slow, or you still have the movement speed, or you have a free opportunity to hook them, and this basically dooms them no matter what. With this build, you can literally be the Terminator, just sprinting it down at your opponents who are naturally squishier than you and vulnerable to being CC'd out of position either through a hook or just by a knockup after being ran at. Let's be real here. If you're fighting against Nami as Blitzcrank, and she has no way to hit you with her Q because you have like 900 movement speed, how does she actually get away from you as Blitzcrank? The answer is she doesn't, and she's probably dead. Of course, she could always try and use her ulti to get away and set you up for the double CC with her ulti bubble combo, but if you're so fast that you could literally run around that, like, what's the difference, man? She just wastes even more cooldowns and dies again. Of course, this is just one specific example talking about Nami and Blitzcrank. We're not even mentioning AD carries or anything like that. You could have even more targets that you can go after other than the support. And even then, mentioning just supports, this applies to most Enchanter supports too, and other squishy ones as well. What the heck's a Brain gonna do? You'd think he can hit his Q on you? No! You have 900 movement speed. You are literally a walking train with grappling hooks coming out of every single train car window. What are they gonna do? And while I can't promise you that I can bring you the power of Thomas the Tank Engine Blitzcrank skin, I can promise you that you will improve if you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. Since we have Blitzcrank as an example, I can use him to say that we have a guide on him on the website, and many other champions too, and all of these are made by challenger level players. Maybe you're not looking to learn a new champion, well, we've got other ones too, macro guides, micro guides, and just generic tips for each and every lane and basic skills that you need to practice. We're always trying to make more and better content, so make sure you guys let us know what you want to see, that way we can work on what you guys want and need to improve right now. As we blast our way back into the jungle, we're going to be accompanied by Graves, and this time he's also got his cigar back. With his new smokescreen machine, he's been having no issues shutting out the competition right now with some interesting rune and item choices. We haven't seen Phase Rush taken on Graves in quite some time now, but it's coming back. So you're going to want to take that Phase Rush, follow it up with Nimbus Cloak, which is really great for mobility, especially with Blue Smite and Smite in general, as it's a very low cooldown ability. Follow that up with Celerity, and then Water Walking, as well as Precision Secondary with Triumph and Alacrity. Fill out your minor rune choices with attack speed, adaptive, and armor. This is one of the standard things that pretty much every jungler takes, but the attack speed is especially important on Graves. You might not think so, but every point of attack speed is very important for Graves, as not only does it affect the shot speed, but also his reload speed. As far as items goes though, there's no surprise here that Graves wants warriors. He's a champion that scales really well with AD, and cooldown reduction is fantastic on him, so grab your warriors early on. Then make sure you pick up tabbies or merc treads depending on the enemy team, and if you're really fed, and I mean really fed, sure, go ahead, pick up Berserker Greaves, but if you die because you get CC'd, don't blame me please, I'm just the man with the message. After that, your second item is going to be Umbral Glaive. This is a very good cost-effective item for Graves. He's great with it because he doesn't have good attacks for clearing out wards, so this helps you with your vision control anytime you spot wards out, whether they be control wards or you revealing normal wards, and on top of that, lethality is amazing for him. You may as well take advantage of the item when it's super cheap and still does exactly what you want it to do with a great bonus in clearing wards. By taking this item second and very early on in the game, considering that it's even cheaper than your jungle item, you're making the conscious choice to play towards Graves' strength. You're going to oppress your enemies as they have no vision and can't control you as you do way too much damage to their squishies. You can eventually get to the point where you can invade the enemy jungle 24/7 and not really care about how many people come and try to stop you. After the glaive, make sure you pick up a U-Moves for the mobility, and then grab a Mortal Reminder if you feel like you're needing even more armor penetration against somebody like a tank. It's also really good because of the Executioner's effect, where you have the Grievous Wounds that debuffs people's healing. That's also a very important part of the item. If not though, pick up a Duskblade instead. After that, route out your build with an Edge of Night for the spell shield and even more lethality in AD. If you happen to run this build on Graves, you're going to notice two things. One, you're one of the most annoying things in the universe because you can go in, auto-attack somebody twice, use an ability, and all of a sudden you run at the speed of light as they try to escape from you and your absurd damage. The second thing is that if somebody dives on top of you and they actually have the upper hand, you can hit them once, use an ability, dash away and auto-attack them again, and all of a sudden you will be able to run away at the speed of light and they can't catch up to you anymore. As you can see, it's a pretty obvious pattern. And speaking of patterns, let's move on to a champion who's really no surprise to be on this list. It was only a matter of time before the build for Darius started to change because of all the item changes recently. Many of you are probably already familiar with the fact that Darius almost always wants to take Flash and Ghost in the top lane just due to how he is. He's Darius, man. He wants to run you down, get his passive off, and execute you. And you also probably know that you want to take Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand, Nimbus Cloak, and Celerity with the attack speed, adaptive, and armor in your minor runes to fill out all of your rune page and make sure that you have the best offense possible against your opponents and so you can run them down really easily. So where does the curveball come in, you ask? Well, obviously the only thing that's left is the item build, and here Darius is starting with the Triforce. Nothing new yet, with Merc Treads or Tabbies depending on the enemy team. Fair enough, but then you want to get a Titanic and then a Death Stance third, followed up by a Righteous Glory and then a Sterix Gauge. The Triforce isn't really all that strange, although it's definitely different from a Black Cleaver that we're so used to seeing first on him. Beyond that though, I can't even remember the last time I saw Titanic Hydra built on Darius at all, let alone second item. And beyond that, I thought it would be, maybe one person or two people building this, but no, it's at least 5, and that's just the ones that we can find a high density of games that are played on in Korean high elo, specifically Masters or above. While the Triforce definitely is just a little bit of a variation, and the Titanic really throws you for a loop, Death Stance isn't really all that far-fetched. The rework gave it armor and magic resist, which is really nice for Darius as a Juggernaut who is immobile and can take a lot of damage. He needs the extra survivability from the bleed and the armor and magic resist that he gets. Other than that though, the Omnivamp is super good on him, plus on top of that cooldown reduction, great stat for him. Now that Death Stance isn't just a purely offensive item, he actually has a pretty good case to buy it, and so that's why we see this build doing so well. But of course, what am I talking about all this for? We gotta talk about that Righteous Glory because that one is definitely strange. But what if I told you that if you didn't go Righteous Glory, you no longer have an incredibly strong gap closing tool and you don't have 40% cooldown reduction? You have to choose one or the other if you buy any other item. Now that actually starts to make sense, right? Deadman's would be a great buy, but you want to hit that 40% cooldown reduction. It's pretty juicy. The movement speed is nice, yes, and it's great to not get kited on Darius where every point of movement speed counts. But you just miss out on that 40% and then you can't buy something that's super high value like Sterix as the last item. The build overall definitely shifts Darius' strengths over. You don't really have that big of a team fighting presence if you aren't ahead, because you just don't have the same health, armor, and magic resist that you would if you were building, say, a Deadman second. While the Death Stance definitely helps mitigate this, it's not going to make up for everything. But what is clear is that this build smashes in almost every single game that it's played in. And in response to this extremely annoying, speedy, and really hard to kill Darius, let's talk about Hecarim top. This is probably one of the very few champions who could actually outrun a Flash Ghost Nimbus Cloak Darius, because Hecarim himself is one of the fastest champions in League. And I mean, come on, we're talking about his E here. Hecarim's E gives him a ton of movement speed for a long period of time. And of course, Hecarim isn't only going to be trying to run away from Darius, he has a respectable amount of damage as well as a lot of healing. Remember, Hecarim's W can heal off of both minions and champions, and it's uncapped when we're talking about champions here. And considering that Conqueror is the way to go for a lot of top lane champions right now, that's why Hecarim takes Teleport and Ignite as summoner spells in the top lane more often than anything else, and performs really well with it. As far as runes go, you're going to look at something that's pretty similar to what Darius would want. You grab Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand, and then Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic for your secondaries. Hecarim really needs the mana, and the movement speed from Time Warp Tonic plus the instant restore is really strong on him. And if you feel like you really don't need Biscuits, well, take free boots then. More movement speed and free boots is always welcome on Hecarim. Oh yeah, and let me not forget, you want to take the double adaptives for your minor runes as well as an armor or a magic resist one depending on what you're fighting against. Aside from all that setup and ridiculous synergy with all the runes that you're going to be taking, his item build is also pretty standard as it hasn't really changed in several years. You're looking at a Triforce first item. The movement speed, the sheen effect, the attack speed, everything is literally amazing for Hecarim. After that, your boots are pretty obvious. Come on now, say it with me now. Tabbies or Merc Treads depending on the enemy team. After that, pick up a Righteous Glory. You get that super high movement speed and gauge, and with Hecarim, you get AD based on your movement speed, so this is even more valuable for you. Of course, the cooldown reduction, health, and everything else is super nice for you too, so you may as well grab it second. After that, you can pick up a Death Stance to really make your 1v1s and team fighting in general absolutely incredible. Hecarim already has great healing thanks to his W, and of course that's supplemented by Conqueror. But throw in a Death Stance on top of that, prolonging his life even more so that he can get even more healing off from his W and the Death Stance himself, well, that's a win. Then you can round out your build with a Spirit Visage and then finish everything off with a Sterix. Really, your last item's open to interpretation, but if you can't afford it, always make sure you pick up that Spirit Visage. You could even pick it up last if you feel like you need something like Guardian's Angel or some other armor item, or even Sterix before that. And with Hecarim wrapping everything up, those are the best new Korean builds that have been absolutely dominating the ladder. And in order to get yourself dominating the ladder, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. Want a guide on some of the champions we covered in this video? We got you covered. Want Want a guide on macro? Hey, that's up there too. Looking for micro tips and ways to practice basic skills like CSing, how to rotate, protecting towers, taking towers, and I could go on this sentence forever and ever? Well, we got those too. Everything that we have up there is made by challenger level players, and we're always working with our content creators to make more and better content for you guys. If you happen to be interested in a particular topic or video, make sure you let us know. That way we can work on what you guys want to see right away and give you guys the best edge to win and improve in your games. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. What do you guys think of the new builds? Some of these are like half resurging / half new. Some of them are like new item builds. Some of them are completely new rune builds that we've never seen before. It's a pretty interesting one overall, I think, although not as many champions as we've seen in the past. Something that I am keeping my eyes on is full lethality 80 carries, but we don't really have enough information on that. But if that happens to go really big boom brain mode, expect to see something on it soon. Anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.